He's like, oh. Good morning. How is everyone doing today?
Good. How are you?
Good. Wait till everyone gets fully connected and then we will get started. Just got a couple of people just trying to connect fully. Then we'll get started. Alrighty. So we have some new people starting this week, which is really exciting. Thank you guys all for joining and being part of our group, VTNE Prep, the crash course. So I'll just kind of do a little rundown of the course itself. So you guys can hopefully kind of follow along to what the course is like, and then you know, each week what is to be expected and that kind of stuff. So each week everyone has you know, something a little bit different. And so this week you guys will be working on your course stuff in your session. So you guys will have the stuff in the top, so the generalized stuff that you have. So the introductory stuff, your Zoom hall stuff that's in here, any announcements that are specific to your course itself. You will have also like for your course in here, so like emergency and critical care, you have your pre-test, your actual lecture in here, your lecture notes, and then like, you know, we'll go over CPR for emergency and critical care, just like some additional notes. If we'll talk about like dystocia and everything, reproduction, blood transfusions, all of that. The next week after that, we'll go over diagnostic imaging and dentistry. I kind of fit those guys in there together. And I do that because there's diagnostic imaging in dentistry. And then, so we'll do a little bit like hands-free stuff too, just so you have that. And so all of that's in there. So the idea behind it is that typically you guys, it's a little bit of a flip class. So you'll do all of this stuff ahead of time. Sorry, getting on. You do all of this stuff ahead of time so that you guys will come to the course and you have this stuff ready so that you are able to ask questions that you come that you had, you know, you had from your weekly stuff. So if you like took a quiz in dentistry and you were like, oh, you know, this question didn't make sense to me, so can you go over this? Or I had this math problem and I completely forgot from school or whatever, or I've never done this in practice or whatever, and so would you be able to go over these? And the interesting thing is so many other people are like, yes, this was like CRIs are like not my jam. I don't know how to do this. So it's really nice to be able to go this. Some people, someone asked, this week is emergency. It depends on what course you are in, because some of them I have to look at, the rotation gets a little bit wonky, so I need to like fix them. Because if you're in another course, it might have been animal care and nursing or something. So that might have been yours. If you are in that, so just check. The nice thing is today I'm going to go over animal care and nursing. So, or sorry, animal care and nursing and emergency. How do you know? It should say on yours, on the corner here, it says this week. You can see it on mine. There's like a little indicator that goes, this week is whatever. Mine might look a little bit different because I'm like the teacher. So, but it should kind of show that. Oh, yours is emergency. Okay. But today I figured I'd go over animal care and nursing and emergency, because they are kind of similar in some ways. Each week they'll go through. So like next week, this little blue bubble is going to move to diagnostic imaging and dentistry. And it'll go, this week is diagnostic imaging and dentistry. And then it'll move down to pharmacology and it'll move down to anesthesia. Yeah, good question. No, you just got to keep track, right? No, it will get confusing then, but no, that blue bubble moves. Yes, so if you have the extension, once you get to that test anxiety and tips or and whatnot, if you get the extension, that blue bubble does go away. So you then are able to kind of surf through and do whatever you want. So that's kind of the different aspect of it, is that it won't go like this week is, you know, one by one by one by one. If you would rather, if you get the extension and would rather like start over again, I can always move you to a different course as well and then start over again. You can always do that. So just let me know how you would prefer to do it as well. So Anna, since you have the extension, I can always move you to another course if you'd rather do that again and like start over. So I thought you're supposed to do the pharmacology pre-test for today. Pharmacology pre-test. I'm not sure. It might have been just due to. So if I don't purchase the extension, do I lose access to all the content when the time is up? Yes. So when your time is up, so say that 12 weeks is up, you do lose all of that, your access to the content and everything like that. So but if you do have like I should say this, you lose a lot of that content. There will be some content that you are able to keep. Once you go through, you'll kind of see what I'm talking about with some of the content, but you will lose a lot of the content that goes through. The idea is hopefully by the time you are done, you will have taken the test. So hopefully that isn't the case, that you'll absolutely need it. All right. No problem. And yeah, so I'm gonna fix how your guys's lectures go through so that we are sure that we're on the same week each week, so that it isn't all mixed up, but it shouldn't be super off from each other. So all right, any other questions? All right. One other thing, so you guys aren't confused, is that if you guys see on my side bar here, if you want to go to the current Zoom study halls or the past Zoom sessions, you can click on the current Zoom sessions and it'll give you, you know, like pharmacology, or it'll give you the past Zoom sessions, which are a lot of the past Zoom sessions that we had. So if you're like, oh my gosh, you know, I really need help in math, like math is a big one, right? And so if we maybe didn't cover some of the math stuff that happened in a current Zoom session, you didn't understand it very well, and we only did like maybe one problem in the current Zoom session, definitely check in some of the other Zoom sessions that we did in other courses, because it probably was covered in different ways in those other sessions that we've had. Especially, I mean, we've been doing this for a couple of years now, so you can definitely check in here. You know, there are some on YouTube, but not all of them are listed. So there's a lot more listed in here for you guys. So definitely check that. Or if you want to check on blood transfusions, there's zoonosis stuff, or there's like large animal in here and everything. So people, you know, are really nervous about large animals. So I don't always touch on like a ton of large animal stuff, but like I have one specific for a large animal that we did as well. So definitely check out some of those as well. I always say people can listen in the car or something like that. All right. Don't watch in the car, but listen. So. All right. So any questions from people from last week or things that happened throughout the week? I know we have a lot of new faces, but I know that there are some from last week. We had a lot of people pass over the last couple of weeks, so that was nice.
Can you go over like the dehydration and replacing fluids
Yeah,
equations and stuff?
yes, of course. So I think this is actually in my lecture today, but I will go over it first though. All right. I'm like, oh, someone asked me for a math question. I like that. As you know.
I will probably always ask you a math question.
I'm like, I love math questions. Okay, so dehydration. So as you guys know, so like if we are looking at a patient and we are trying to figure out if they're dehydrated, right? We assess them based on a percentage, right? So if we are figuring out, you know, how do you guys figure out if they're dehydrated? What do you look at?
Like the skin turgor and if they have sunken in eyes and that kind of.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, sunken eyes, skin turgor. We even look at like gums if they're tacky, right? Just things to that nature. So, you know, skin turgor, some people are like, yeah, it's hard to tell just based on that, but yeah, if it's kind of hard to return, that kind of thing, if they have tacky mucous membranes, if their eyes are a little bit sunken in, like those types of things. So based on that, so we can say how much in percentage they're actually going to be dehydrated, right? So from that, we can say, are they 5%? Are they 6%? Are they 8%? And so it's very subjective, but we utilize that. So to determine their dehydration, we then have a formula from there that we use to turn that into milliliters, and that we can replace that that dehydration. So anyone know what that formula is?
Body weight times the percentage dehydrated in decimal.
Okay, so body weight in pounds or kilograms?
Kigs.
Kigs, good. Kigs times percent in decimal, right? In decimal. Times, sorry, I was times, what was the last part?
Percentage of dehydration.
Okay, so percentage of dehydration in decimal form times what? Because we want to get it in milliliters.
1,000.
1,000, very good. Yeah, 1,000, very good. All work together, right? So essentially, if you don't multiply it by 1,000, it'll get you into liters. Okay. So you need just think of it that way. So you need to multiply by 1,000 to get milliliters, right? So we want it in milliliters. So there are some other people who do and it's a lot of like older vets and stuff that will do kilograms times percent, like leave it as that whole number times 10, and it gets you that milliliters. But because to me, it has to make sense to me, right? I always say, like, where does this 10 come from, right? Like I completely understand that they're using that as like just a method of being able to solve the problem, but it has to just make sense. So it's totally fine if you want to use that in practice or do whatever you want, right? But at least if they ask you a question of like, what's the formula, right? The actual like formula, like book wise, textbook wise, what's that formula? Like, this is your standard formula for it. And the reason being is that this is going to get you it in milliliters, because 1,000 mils is in a liter, right? And then if you don't have the 1,000 in there, that's going to get you liters. Okay. So this is just kind of a little cheat method. So anywho, so if we have our patient who's dehydrated, we're going to have that as our replacement, essentially. Now, what is our formula for if we, so this is replacement. Let's put this here, replacement. If I can write, you guys will learn that it's hard for me to write on a screen. Okay, so how about resuscitation? Yeah. Okay. So how do we how are we actually What is our formula for our resuscitation fluids? So there's a dog formula and a cat. And you might know this a little bit different rather than resuscitation. You might know this as shock.
For dog, isn't it like 90 mil per kg, or is it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Cat is 60 mils per kg.
Okay,
55.
good. So dog is 90 mils per kg. Okay. Cat is somewhere between, you're going to see 50 to 55 mils per kg. Okay. So somewhere around there, 50 to 55 mils per kg. Good. So where do they get these fluid rates? Do they just make them up?
It's based on total blood volume.
Oh, good. Yay. It is. It's based on their total blood volume, right? So like, I think, oh, so like, what's a horse? Anyone a horse person? I'm not a horse person, but I do know this. It's like maybe one of the only horse things I know.
Like 6 to 20.
6 to 20. No. So their shock rate for a horse. It'd actually be a surprise. It's actually very similar to a dog. It's about 80 mils per kg. So if you go into equine, at least you know, like there's one very similar thing to your dog. Dogs about somewhere between 80 to 90 mils per kg. So, but we typically go with 90 mils per kg. It's kind of our safe bet. So typically we have a resuscitation phase that goes first before replacement in our fluid therapy, right? So if a patient comes in and is really sick, we're going to go with resuscitation phase first, right? They're really shocky. We're going to do resuscitation phase first. Then we'll do replacement phase, right? Replace that fluid loss that they've had. And then what is the last phase of fluids that we do?
Maintenance.
Maintenance, right? Maintenance. So what is our maintenance fluids? This is like the whole controversial topic for the VTNE.
Doesn't it range from like 2 to 4 kgs per? I'm sorry, 2 to 4 mils per kg.
Okay, so I think you're pretty close. It's 2 to 6 mils per kg. I'll say that 6 being that for like neonates, we go up
That
to
makes sense.
that 6, right? We can go up to the 6. I think for our regular, adult animals, we typically go somewhere between that 2 to 3-ish range. You know, maybe go a little bit higher if we need to. But typically 2.5 mils will get you that 60 mils per kg per day, if you think of it that way, right? But that 2 mils per kg is 2 times 24 is that 48, right? So if you think of it that way, 48 mils per kg per day would be like kind of more conservative for some of our CAT patients or cardiac patients, right? So we have typically done in the past like 60 mils per kg per day for standard for everyone, right? And then we ran into the issue with, you know, animals who had cardiac issues and they didn't do well, and that type of thing. And I think you'll run into on the VTNE, they still do a lot of just standardized 60 mils per kg per day, I think just to make it easy. But remember, in practice, we do have to range it a little bit more because not everyone is the same. So do keep that in mind, that everyone's going to be different. So, but very good. If you do look at some other things as well, they do have other formulas too that you'll have, like the one for dogs. I don't know if anyone has seen dogs, 132 times, well, I guess you don't need the times there. 130, well, I guess, whatever. Kgs to the 0 to 75th. Has anyone seen that?
I have not.
No? Okay.
Yes, I've seen that.
Okay. So, and then anyone seen the cat one? It's 80
No.
to the 0 to 75th. Again, it's gonna be very much of what formula your doctor uses in practice, right? So, but just be aware that there are multiple formulas out there of what you're gonna use. So, but the nice thing is that these guys do fall within this range. So, that's kind of why I do like to use at least, oh, sorry, this is per hour. So, I do like to use this because it is a lot easier, to be able to just be like, tell me where you want to go with it, right? Like, do you want to be a little bit more conservative? Do you want to, you know, start low? Do you want to do a little bit more? Like, what do you want to do?
So I have a question if
Yeah.
So, hi, I'm Maria. I took the VTNE and did not pass it. So
Yeah.
this is a lot. I mean, you know, I really studied. Vet tech prep did not really help me. I mean, I spent 2.5 months studying 2 hours a day.
Yeah.
So my biggest issue is there's a lot of information and a lot of different ways to do this.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
So your formula there, is that the best thing to use for me to memorize? And I'm not in the industry.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that's what I'm trying to, because I studied so much stuff. I think I confused myself.
Right. So the unfortunate thing is that the VTNE is very, very outdated. And so that is really one thing that we are, as educators, very much trying to get it more updated, because it is hard to teach people who are in the field now to study for a test that's completely outdated when they're going to go into the field and be doing stuff that's completely outdated based on a test that's outdated. Like, these formulas came out in 2013. So doctors are practicing things very different than what we're supposed to teach you. So that's why it's like, I want to prepare you guys for a test, but I also want to prepare you for real life too. So you'll hear me say things and be like, okay, like, this is what I want you to know for a test, but I also want you to know this in case you do see it in practice. So it is really, really hard. And I guess I do kind of want to pride myself on the fact that, like, yeah, I'll prepare you for the test, but I do want you to be super awesome in practice as well. So you'll hear me say two different things and be like, focus on this for the test, but please know you will see this in practice. So just do it for the test or whatever. But I do know that they have made some changes to the test. I just don't know that they have made the changes yet to the fluid rate aspects or whatever. And I don't know why. I think that the reason is that this just seems easier for them to grade certain things for some aspects. But to me, it's still a multiple choice. They still can make it easy. I don't know. So I think that for yourselves, you're still safe with being able to do the fluid rates this way, and we'll do math problems multiple times where I'll go, okay, I want you guys to do the fluid rates with this formula here. And then I want you to do a formula with this one, and then let's try this. Like, let's just do it. And these formulas are a little bit more difficult to do because nobody likes doing a formula to, the 0.75 power. It's not extremely fun, but I do like to show you like the way to do it. Another reason why they probably don't do it on the VTNE is because they give you a simple calculator. So it doesn't have, a way for you guys to do a square root or anything like that. So I think they would have to give you guys a little bit more advanced calculator, like a scientific calculator. So, but at least they could change it to make you guys do, this formula here. It would be a little bit easier, I guess. So, but I do like to at least expose you guys to the different formulas. So let's try a few things. So if we are going to say we have a patient, right, who comes in, they are, oh gosh, let me make up a number. They are 98 pounds. Okay. And they are very shocky. Okay. Let's see what you guys know about our shock rates. All right. Oh, and we'll say it's a dog. I gotta give you that. They're a dog. All right. Tell me how much we should give of our shock fluids right away. I didn't tell you our like little rule on shock fluids. Anyone know?
Start with a quarter shock dose.
Ooh, good. Yeah. So we're gonna start always with a quarter of our shock. Quarter shock. Wait, start with 1/4 over 20 minutes on these. Okay. And then afterwards we'll reassess our patient and see if we need to do more. So we always do a quarter at a time. And so how do we reassess then, right? So we look at if our patient's shocky. So how do we know if our patient is shocky? when they come in. We just look at them and we're like, oh, they look really bad. No.
Sugar or the skin standing up.
Okay, so we know that, yeah, we can tell that like they're dehydrated, but what else? Anyone ever see a patient? in shock? Okay, gum color?
Delayed CRT.
Ooh, yeah, delayed CRT, okay. What else?
So do
Blood
a
pressure?
physical exam.
Okay, so we're doing like a brief physical exam, right? What else?
Eyes sunken in.
Okay, maybe eyes sunken in, but that's more like dehydration. What's more like, that's more of our yeah, dehydration aspect. But what makes them shock?
Respiratory rate.
Could be respiratory
Oh.
rate, okay.
The low blood pressure.
Yes, low blood pressure, very good, right? They may have what we consider like almost no blood pressure, right? Like you can't even maybe feel a pulse even, or, like very poor pulses. They could have cold limbs, so very, very good. What else?
Heart rate.
Ooh, what about the heart rate?
Tachycardia.
Yeah, tachycardia. Very good. There we go. We're on to something. Very good. So those are two really big ones, right? They can be very tachycardic and they can have very, very low blood pressure, right? So we got to get some fluids in them to get some fluids in that vascular space, right? So what we do is we get those fluids in, and then we're going to reassess our blood pressure and reassess our heart rate for sure. Okay. Our patient might be cold, right? But a lot of times what's happening during shock is that all of their heat source is going where? It doesn't go to the peripheral, like,
The vital organs.
yeah, the vital organs, right? It's going to like the core of the body. It's going, oh my gosh, I gotta preserve the good stuff, right? Like who cares about my limbs anymore? So are we getting like a true good temperature? Probably not, right? We're getting butt temps and like that's not super accurate. So we have to keep that in mind. So a lot of people all of a sudden go, oh my gosh, we have to start heating our patient. And it's like, well, unless that's like 90 degrees, like we don't necessarily have to like super actively warm them. Like maybe we can keep them warm a little bit or put a blanket on them or something like that, but we don't have to like get crazy with the warming aspect, because once we get them out of that shock phase, like they'll get better, like their temp will go back to where it is, and stuff like that. Or we can give them some warm fluids or whatever if that makes you feel better, because fluids are cold, so, but keep that in mind, like their body is heating where it's supposed to heat. So, okay, so we have a 98-pound dog, right? So we gotta turn that to kgs.
44.54.
All right, 44.54 kgs. I made that so excitingly fun there. Okay. So if we do our shock dose, right, we're gonna multiply that by our 90 mils. And we get 4,009. I think, yeah,
Yes.
is our total, okay? And then we're going to do a quarter dose, right? And so therefore we're going to divide that by 4. or you can multiply by a quarter. Either way, it's totally fine. Hold on 1 second.
I think there's an extra zero in your 4,000. It says 40,000. Sorry.
No, thank you for that. I was getting too excited. Okay, so we have then 1,002 mLs. All right. Clearly, if this were in, practice, you would just skip the liter, but we don't have to be exact in practice, but. Okay, so we would give that over the 20 minutes. And so that's our shock dose, okay? So let's say that he is 8% dehydrated. All right, so 8% dehydrated. So how are we gonna do the dehydration?
Would you turn it in the 0.08 into the decimal?
Yes, absolutely. So we're gonna take that 44.54, right? Milligrams. Multiply that by 0.08. And then multiply that by 1,000, right? So 44.54 times 0.08 times 1,000. What did you guys get?
3563.
All right. 3563 mLs. It's a lot. Okay, so typically for like dehydration, we're going to give that over a longer period of time. So say your doctor's like, okay, for dehydration, we're going to rehydrate him over, like 24 hours. Okay. So we'll talk about that. So if we rehydrate over 24 hours. Okay, so we'll talk about that in just a second. All right, so then our maintenance, okay? So now we're gonna talk about maintenance. So maintenance for him, your doctor's like, okay, we're gonna do maintenance, and our maintenance, I just wanna do the 60 mils per kg per day, okay? But I'm gonna show you a quick way to do the 60 mils per kg per day where you're not like, oh my God, this is so annoying. So if you take 60 mils per kg per day right away, change it to per hour. So just do 60 mils and divide that right away by 24. So you do 60 because of 24 hours, right? 60 divided by 24, that gives you that 2.5 mils per kg per hour. So we do fall in the range of this formula, right? So it's right in that kind of middle range. So you can do that if you want. And just know like, hey, I do fall in my middle range, and you can just easily do that all the time and not have to be like, oh, 60 mils per kg per day and have to do that whole formula all the time. It's so annoying. I don't know. I find it annoying. But you know how many years I did that, right? Until recently, I was like, oh, I should just do 2.5 mils per kg and be done with it. So, okay, so we have we'll do 2.5 mils times 44.54, okay, pigs. And we get what?
111.35.
All right, 111.35 mils per hour, okay? So our doctor wants us to rehydrate, right? Our patient so that 30, actually, I'm gonna change this to something harder than that. So he wants us to rehydrate it over 18 hours. Let's say that. Okay. So over 18 hours. All right, make it harder. So since they want us to rehydrate over 18 hours, we have to take that 3563. And what we're gonna do is we are gonna divide that by 18 hours. So we can get an hourly rate of just the dehydration, okay? Because at the end of the day, what we're gonna do is we're gonna add up the maintenance and the dehydration together because we have to come up with an hourly rate of those two together, okay? Because we're rehydrating the patient with maintenance fluids. So maintenance means that that's just maintaining that guy's fluid rate with just what he needs to survive, but he's already dehydrated. So we have to like backtrack what he already needed from before, right? So after he's rehydrated, we're going to stay just on maintenance, but he does need that rehydration of fluids. So, so that 3563, okay, divide that by 18. And that gets us, oh, there goes my dog. Hey, stop barking. So 3563 mLs divide by 18 hours. That gets us 1979 mLs per hour. Okay. Does that all make sense so far?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So now we get to add up 111.35 plus 197.9 equals plus 309.25.
I've got 2.9,
29, okay.
so 310.
Yeah, do you guys want to just round up 3? So it makes it look pretty. I'm like, I can't do this. Okay. All right. So this is our hourly rate with maintenance and dehydration together. All right. So he's going to be on all of those fluids, get him rehydrated and also that maintenance fluids. All right. So say you have no pumps or your power went out and there's the backup generator broke or whatever. And now you have to do a drip rate. Oh God, this is a mess, right? So we have to figure out our drip rate. So we do 309.3 mLs. And how do we figure out our drip rate? So we need to figure out essentially drips per second at the end of the day. So we have hours here, right? So let's change our hours into seconds.
Times 60 minutes per hour.
Okay, 60 minutes per hour. And then how many, so what I do is I have we have 60 minutes in our hour, right? And then how many seconds are in our minute?
60.
60.
60. So what I just do is I take those two together. So 60 times 60 is 30. I can't write. 3,600 seconds. So I just always know that. So anytime I do a drip rate, I just automatically go, it's 3,600 seconds in an hour. But that's me. So I just make things really easy. So if I do that, go 3,600 seconds in an hour. And then all I need to do in here is figure out my drip set from there. And then my problem's super, super easy because I've just only had to take my hourly rate and then add my drip set. So for him, our drip set is, we have the option of a macro or a micro. And the nice thing is that on the VTNE, I believe still that they actually give you the drip set that you're going to use. But in reality, you get to choose your drip set, right? So what drip set are you guys going to use for him? So you have a macro and a micro. So a macro set is going to be 15 drips, big drips per mil. Micro is 60 tiny drips per mil. Okay.
Macro.
Okay, good. So macro is for patients that are for greater than 7 kilograms, and micro is for patients that are for less than 7 kilograms. Okay. So he's going to get that macro set. So we insert then that 15 drips per ml. So if you are that dimensional analysis person, I personally try to simplify everything so that as you can see that I hate dimensional analysis. It's just very confusing to me, but
Me too.
If you are, so you can cross out your mils there and it leaves you then with your drips per second. Okay, so you are good. So now you just have to do your math part. Okay, so you have 309.3 times 15 divided by that 3,600. And what do we have?
1.29.
Okay. So drips per second.
Seconds.
So on the VTNE, you're really lucky. They will let you leave it in this form. But in real life, you can't do 1.29 drips per second, right? So so essentially what we have to do is we have to play with fractions to see how we can make this part a whole number. Because right now what we're dealing with is we have a fraction at this point. It is 1.29 over 1, essentially. It's drips per second. So essentially what we need to do is we need to make this, a greater number on top here and a greater number on bottom, but make them both whole numbers. Okay. So if you multiply the bottom number by something, then you're going to get a whole number on the top and the bottom. So you can play with your calculator. That's typically what I do. And you'll end up getting a whole number on the top and the bottom. For the most part, like get it as close as you can to a whole number. Anyone get it? Yeah. I'll tell you it's 9 drips, but I won't tell you how many seconds.
I'm sorry, just need to go back to the 309.3 times 15 divided by 360.
Yeah,
Okay, but I got 12.9, not 1.29.
oh, did I do that wrong? 309.3
Isn't it 3,600
times,
we divided by, not 360?
yeah, it's 3,600.
12.8. Right?
So 309.3 times
fif-
15 divided by
divided by
30,
three.
yeah, divided by 3,600.
12.88. So I'm completely off.
So
Yeah.
yeah, did you get 309.3 times 15 divided
Yep.
by 3,600?
3,600, sorry. That's my part. Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay, so did you guys get the seconds part? Anyone? No? Okay. So take that 1.29 and multiply that by 7. Try that.
What? Oh, by the, okay.
What'd you get?
9.9.
9.
Yeah,
9.002 or something, right?
With 3.
go through.
Okay. 3. Okay. So if you get a weird number, so if you got 1.92 or whatever, when you multiply, I first multiplied by 5 because I was like, it's a weird number. And I'm like, nope, that's not going to work. And then I went back, right? And then I multiplied, then I was like, maybe 7 will work. I don't know. I just played with numbers and then I went, that's good enough, right? And then I called that a day. I was like, that's good by 300ths, right? So that meant if I multiplied by 7, that's the bottom number when you multiply that, okay? So that's 7 seconds. So that's how it's gonna look. That means that when you're counting your seconds, you're gonna count 7 seconds and you're gonna get 9 drips in those 7 seconds, okay? So basically, it's gonna almost be free flowing at that point, right? It's gonna be going pretty fast, but at least you have a good idea of like how fast it's gonna go. So, but in case you're like in practice and need to do it, that's how you would do it. Okay. Lucky enough for you guys, you're only gonna have to go to this step. So, but I'll make you still do this step for me. So I make it a little bit harder.
Good to know.
Right. You
Good
never
to-
know, right? If we have some crazy weather, and of course your hospital will have some weird backup generator issue. You're like, of course, my life. So you're
Beth,
like,
could
nope,
I
we're
ask you a
closing
question?
shop. Yes.
So I guess I'm still a little confused. How come so you just use a random number to get the 9 trips?
I personally do, because I just pick numbers until I can get that, unless you're like super, super good at fractions. Like sometimes I'll get, like I'll actually know the decimal fraction. Like if I get 0.25, then I'm like, yes, easy peasy, right? Like what's
Yeah.
1/4? Like my lucky day, or like
Mhm.
0.33. I'm like, yay. But sometimes you'll get like a weird one where you're like, I don't know that fraction by heart, or, like I don't know the matchup or whatever.
Mm.
So there are some weird ones that I have to like figure out on my own. So yes, I'll have to kind of pick numbers until I can get that right fraction, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Or you can just
And-
Google it.
Or you could Google it. Google is your friend, right? Yeah. What's the fraction to this decimal? What's gonna take less time for you? That's true. I didn't even think of that. It'll get
And
you
also-
better with your fractions and decimals. I mean, it's been a long time since we all had to do that.
Yeah, you're not
Yeah.
kidding.
And also, Beth, you know how you guys just were talking about when you did the 60 minutes times 60 seconds,
Yes.
I got the 3,600 seconds in an hour, right?
Yes. Yes.
And then I guess when you are trying to solve that, because you're using the 15, the macro
Yes.
drip, so you multiply the 309 times 3, I'm sorry, 309.3 times 15,
Uh-huh.
which you get the 4,639. But then how did you got more, you got 3,600 or 36 seconds? I guess that's where it threw me off too.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
So you can so you get the 309.3 times the
Mhm.
15, and then just divide it right away by the 3,600, and that's where you get that 1.29. You can also,
Oh,
by
did
the
I-
way, always,
Uh-huh.
like some people will do the 309.3 divided by 3,600 times 15. You can also do it that way as well. So
Mhm.
it doesn't matter what order that you do it in. So
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't getting the same number. I was like, where am I going wrong? Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah. I missed you last week, by the way.
I know, me too. It was 2 Saturdays in a row. I felt kind of like lost,
Oh,
but I'm better now.
oh, good. I'm glad.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so any other questions on this one? I know it's like a kind of a long problem, but we do see this.
I have a
quite
question.
bit. Yeah.
So can we always just use the 2.5 ml for maintenance times kigs?
Yes. So pretty much your 60 ml guy is pretty standard for most patients, I would say. Like most of your adult animals that are fairly healthy. It just becomes kind of different. Like if, like I said, we're doing like a neonate patient or maybe like a heart disease patient or something like that, that we might like vary from that. So that's where I say yes on the VTNE 100%, but then when you're in practice, it's not going to be, your patients are going to all be a little bit different, if that makes sense. Like some of your very, very young neonates are gonna be a little bit more on the higher end of things, like 5 to 6 mLs per kg per hour, because they definitely need a more fluids to keep them hydrated and blah, blah, blah. And then, like our heart patients might be 2 mLs because we want to be a little bit more conservative and stuff. But for VTNE sake, 2.5 mLs per kg, because they want to make sure that like we all stay fairly consistent and you're getting the right answer and not getting confused and stuff like that. unless they give you a specific number on the question. Of course, if you're going for your VTS, they'll make it incredibly difficult and all of that. So
So I
That's-
took the test in New York and I
Yeah.
was praying for calculation questions.
I would too. That
There
that would be
were-
my dream.
There were medical terms I'd never seen before.
Oh,
Yeah, I was
I've
praying. for
heard that a lot. I've heard that there's some medical terms that just are coming from, they don't even know where.
I have no, I mean, my math is pretty decent and I'm, like I said, I really studied, but there were questions I was just completely
that's
blown away.
interesting. They should just have me write it.
They should. And
My best friend just took it and she
Period.
said she thought she was taking her boards for a neurosurgeon.
What?
I don't even know. I mean, I was just like, what? But I can tell you that I used vet tech prep and I can tell you that I know I had a question on which tooth on a cat is 3 rooted. And I went back and looked at my vet tech prep and it never mentioned the feline.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Yep.
I went back and looked, because I can tell you a dog has 6 3-rooted teeth,
Yeah.
but, and I can tell you now the feline is the 4th premolar maxillary arcade. Okay. I
Yeah.
really studied.
Yeah. That's interesting.
It was nowhere on there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in New York too, and I think I remember that question because I failed my VTNE by 50 points.
Yeah. I did too. Actually.
Did you?
I failed my
I'm
VTNE
so
by
mad.
points twice, both times.
Yeah.
First time was 100, well, or the third time was 100, fourth time was by 50 points. So.
Ugh.
Well,
I mean,
we're all going to pass it this time.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and I think it's really good too, like, that it's, you guys are in a group setting now, so that way you guys can really also work off of each other, and that's why I encourage a lot, like, definitely utilize, we have like a separate group on Facebook, so hopefully you guys are all on Facebook too. even
Yep,
if it's
uh-huh.
like the devil
Yeah.
at times.
I
But
couldn't stop.
but like even Moodle is an interesting platform and I wish there were things that are easier on there, but when you guys are taking some of those quizzes and stuff too, like if you have questions, don't always wait until Sunday to meet with me. But if you're like, oh, this one is really weird, guys, what are your thoughts on this? Like, if nobody answers you, like I will definitely get on there and answer or whatever, start like a conversation on the crash, like definitely use the crash course one that's specific to you, because I also don't want like the thousands of people to get on there because they're going to put in their thoughts that are like a little
Yeah.
extra.
Yeah.
But I want you guys to utilize each other and stuff too, because most of you have already taken the VTNE at some point, and so you get it and you understand what's going on. And like, well, when I took the VTNE, I saw a question that was similar to this, or I went through this or whatever, or hey, it reminds me of when I was studying this or whatever. So you can have really good conversations and utilize each other. So it's utilize the potential of what this course can really be. I've had people that have been really good with taking this course and it's been amazing. And then I've had a really quiet group and, it's fine. It's just that, you can do a lot with this course, especially with being a group. So, and that's how I studied. Like I took my tests a long time ago, like 15 years ago, and there was nothing. There was no vet tech prep. There was nothing. There were no study books. There was nothing. And so the only way that we could study was with each other. And the test was only offered twice a year, and you had to like drive hours away. Like I had to drive, I'm in Chicago area. I had to drive all the way down to like University of Illinois area. So southern Illinois. and we had to stay overnight, take our tests. I was a written form, so like not online. So it was Scantron. And yeah, it was so different from what you guys have to deal with. But like we just studied with each other. So I think group setting can be really helpful.
Cool.
And then we had to wait 6 weeks to find out if we actually and it came in the mail. And we didn't even know our scores. So I still to this day have no idea what I got. I just know that I passed.
Well, I mean, they scale score it, so I don't really understand that,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and some teacher was trying, so I have some teachers that live in my building and they were trying to explain it to me, but it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I don't think that and I think that's another thing is that like,
It should be more transparent.
yeah, so I think that as educators, like we don't even really understand how it's
Yeah.
scored. And so that's another reason why like nobody can actually make a VTNE type of test because some questions are worth more than others, but
Right, right.
nobody can actually make a test that's actually truly like a VTNE because they don't understand the actual scoring behind it.
Right. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said,
So-
there's just so much information and I hope that, and I like that you have a guideline and that you go over stuff. I think that'll help me more. Just because I think I'm just overwhelmed, you know, like, I mean, this stuff I'm okay with. The pharmacology though, I don't know, you know, how can you know all that if you're not in the field, or even if you're in the field and you're not using certain drugs. So
Yeah.
this is what total, like now I'm focusing more on the cholinergic, anticholinergic. And so I could probably tell you what drugs to use for what things. That's what I studied. And that was not on my test.
Yeah. No, it definitely is a lot. And pharmacology is like literally a whole different language, you know, and I think that was one thing that I struggled a lot in school was pharmacology. And I had worked in the field already for like, 5 years maybe. So I knew drugs that we use, you know, like if someone was like, oh, you know, we're gonna use Baytril in this animal or whatever, like I knew the basics about it, but I didn't know like the things behind it or, you know, like what treat gram positive versus gram negative and all of that. And to me, as an entry level
Right.
CT, you know, I don't know like how much are you supposed to know on certain things, you know? So
Right.
I don't know, like there are some things that I think are focused on a little bit more than others, but you know, I think that some of us question like, should we focus a little bit more on skill level? Like there's some knowledge-based skill level I think is focused on a little bit more than some actual like skill level.
Right.
We
Right.
should be focusing on. So it's interesting, but okay, so any other questions on this aspect of stuff like fluid therapy, math-ish? Otherwise, we'll change focus.
Beth, could you show us the upper portion of this?
Oh, yeah.
Just wanted to see. I saw that you gave us the replacement, right? You also
Yep.
gave us the resuscitation or shock.
Yep.
And the kicks times percentage, that's a one that they use, right? Like the doctors would use.
Yeah, so this
in
one,
there.
like I said, is just another way that you could do it as well. Like, you know how I feel about cheater methods, but you could do it, right? Also
Yeah,
in our resuscitation stuff too, so you'll see sometimes these are resuscitation and replacement and stuff for crystalloids, right? So all of this stuff is crystalloids. Now, if we're talking about colloids, those things are gonna be a little bit different, right? So how many of you guys have utilized colloids or know what colloids are and all of that?
I haven't utilized them. I can tell you what I read
Yay.
in the book.
Okay. So what's the difference between crystalloid and a colloid?
Colloids are larger.
Okay. They're like larger molecules, yeah, yeah. Going into our vascular space, right?
Mhm.
How I always refer to it as like a crystalloid is like something that you would drink normally,
No, I
right?
like it.
If you're drinking a colloid, you're a vampire. Okay. We have natural and synthetic colloids. I mean, some of the crystalloids, if you drink that, would not taste good because some of them are pretty salty. So, but so our colloids. So, like, what are our synthetic colloids that you know of?
Like, are you talking about like HEPA starch?
Head starch, good.
Vet starch.
Good. So head starch. And then we have Veta starch. Awesome. So head starch is our human form. So H for human. And Veta starch is our veterinary form of our synthetic colloid. Okay, so head starch obviously came out first because they needed it for humans first. And so we use it in veterinary medicine. It's cheaper, obviously for veterinary purposes. It's going to be more expensive and more on demand. Veta starch came out, I remember, in like about 2009 because I was at a conference and they were premiering it for everyone. That's how old I am in the field. And I was like, oh, this is super cool. So excited to use it. All of that. I also remember when Deramax came out too. That was in like 2002. I went to a dinner and they're like, it's going to be so much better than Rimadyl and not have any side effects like Rimadyl does. And then that was a lie, but the dinner was good. But whatever. So in resuscitation phase, and I mean any other phase, but resuscitation phase, what is our fluid rates for head starch and then also for Veta starch? They're both different, but these are like extra bonus.
45 mils per kg.
Ooh, close. For Veta starch is close.
Isn't head starch like 20 mils per kg per day and Veta starch is 50 mils per kg per day?
Yes, very good. So 20 mils per kg per day. And Veta starch is 50 mils per kg per day. So that means you can give it all in one sitting, right? Or you can give it over 24 hours, okay? But you can only give it in a 24-hour period. So if you need to bolus like a sema to a patient, we typically do like a quarter dose, just like our shock. Like this can be your shock, right? You give a quarter dose over 20 minutes to also help during shock. Because maybe this patient is not going to hold all of those crystalloids in the vascular space. So you're like, okay, I want to give some head starch to that patient so that we know that the head starch, those large molecules will hold into that vascular space and then hold the crystalloids in the vascular space. So I'll give a little bit of head starch first. And then we'll just do the rest over, over the day. But if we give too much head of starch or beta starch, what could happen? Anyone know?
Overhydrate?
No, not overhydrate.
They develop coagulopathies.
Yes, they can develop coagulopathies. Very good. So they can have bleeding issues. Very, very good. So yeah, we have to be very careful. I love our head of starch and beta starch. So, alrighty. So, now these are also for isotonic crystalloids, these fluid rates, okay? So isotonic meaning the same, oh gosh, how do I put this? Osmolarity, I guess, as your cells. So if we're talking about hypertonic saline, what would that mean?
Isn't that usually a 7.5% saline?
Good. So we have, yeah, 7.5% saline. So, would that be more salt or less salt?
More.
More salt, right? So our normal saline is 0.9% NaCl, right? So this means that we have more salt in the fluid, right? So essentially what's going to happen is it's going to pull fluid out of the cell and bring it to the vascular space, okay? So we use hypertonic saline a lot when we have fluid where it doesn't belong, okay? So that is a lot of times where we'll use it in like head trauma patients, stuff like that. So where they have brain swelling and stuff like that. So we're gonna pull that fluid out of the brain where it doesn't belong and bring it into the vascular space. I love it. It's great. So for that dose for that is 3 to 5 mils per kg for that dose. And we also give that over 20 minutes. So those are just like little extra tidbits for you guys that you can know, but you don't have to necessarily know for the VTNE. So. But that's like my little fluid therapy section. Now, you should know, of course, the hypertonic saline aspect. You should know certain things about head of starch and beta starch, like what they do and what's really important about them, but you don't necessarily need to know the rates of those, okay? They're not going to be like, what's the fluid rate for those things?
Too bad.
I know, those are the easy parts, right? You can memorize that. So,
yep.
For me, memorization is like one of those easy things that you do when you are, oh gosh, young kid, right? Like, and you start memorizing things when you first start school, like even in tech school, you a lot of those classes, even terminology and stuff is a memorization. But then when you start getting to the end of school, you start having to it's a comprehension aspect. And so I think there are a lot of things that we have to do better as educators to like test your comprehension. And so should make it easier for you guys to do testing then and get you out of the habit of memorizing as much. So, and actually comprehending. And then that makes learning a lot more fun too. So, because you
I think
start
that's
putting
my
pieces
issue.
together. Yeah.
Yeah, that's because for the life of me, memorizing, I just can't. I have to understand the whys and like,
Yeah.
where does it come from and how, and then it
Mhm.
actually makes sense to me when I'm trying to solve it.
Yeah.
Because memorizing I just mix up everything. Like it just doesn't
Yeah.
stay how organized in my head.
Well, and that's why I always look at even just like stuff like this. Like, why I say to myself, why is this formula like this? And then I went, oh, well, it makes sense that there's 1,000 in here because it has to get to milliliters. Like, maybe that's the reason. I don't know, but it makes sense to me that it looks this way, but this does not make sense to me. So like, I'm not going to memorize that. I'm not going to teach that to people. If they want to learn it that way, if they want to memorize that, that's fine. But to me, it doesn't make sense. So I'm not going to learn it that way. And I am a why person. Like, I'm going to ask the questions, the why or whatever. So I don't know. I guess I'm like a 3-year-old at heart. Why I ask why all the time. So yeah, I do the exact same thing. I have to ask questions and learn the in-depth things. So I think that that's a really good thing, is to have the comprehension behind it. And it will make things a lot easier, believe me. And you will do the same thing when you're in practice too, like to learn more about cases and stuff, rather than just going through the motions of just taking care of the patients that you have. You should really get in depth of like, well, why is this patient acting this way? Rather than just giving them food, giving them water, walking them, getting their blood. Like, why are you getting their blood? What are you actually looking for? That sort of thing. Oh yeah, the reason why they're acting this way is due to X, Y, and Z. Like, what should you be looking out for? Like, you can actually save lives because the reason why, and there are so many times that I have alerted doctors or actually told the doctor like what's wrong with the patient, and stuff. So you gotta be able to help them out too. So all right. Let me share with you guys. Maybe some of you guys I don't know how many of you guys did the ISVMA thing, but did anyone go to the ISVMA thing? What I'm
I did
talking
not,
about?
because I thought we were doing pharmacology. I was confused.
Oh,
I
okay.
went- Yeah.
So,
Was that something new? Sorry. Or
no.
did I
So
not saw that?
I did a couple lectures for the ISVMA.
Oh my God, yes, I paid for it. Sorry, but I haven't gotten to yours yet. Oh my God,
Okay.
it was so good. I loved it. I love
Oh,
how like
good.
they organized it. Yeah.
Good,
I need to get
good.
to yours.
Well, that's okay.
Sorry.
So I'm just going to go through actually some of that today. So let me, if you guys want to, let me see. Can you guys see at all the code at
Yes.
the top? Okay.
Mhm.
So if you can use your phone or your laptop or computer or whatever. If you go to menti.com and then use the code at the top, you can log into this presentation. We probably won't get through all of it, but we'll get through quite a bit of it. I thought this might be fun because there's questions in here. So. You guys all get it? 7-6. Okay. So, okay, so when we talk about triaging, It means to sort. So even when we're working in general practice, there's a certain amount of triage that we do. So you're going to triage phone calls a lot of times. You'll triage emergency cases that could potentially come in. And sometimes you even have to triage just, your general practice, like, clients that come in as well. But if you're working emergency, you're going to even triage like every patient that comes in. But essentially triage came about through World War II, where a lot of people were injured and they needed to decide on like how they were going to sort all of the people that were injured. And so they essentially came up with a way of sorting everybody from obviously least critical to most critical. And then so from there, it's kind of made its way throughout the medical field. So it really should take less than 5 minutes, and sometimes it takes a minute to triage a patient. And then going through a survey of like airway, breathing, circulation, and disability. So you can talk about like CPR explanation. So, like if your patient is to need resuscitation at any point, what would your wishes be? Which again is a very hard conversation, but many times I just say we just like to have it on file and respect everybody's wishes. We aren't anticipating anything, but we do like to just have that on file. And then oxygen evaluation. Does that patient need to be on oxygen? Would they be more comfortable on oxygen? And sometimes even if you are not sure, it's just better to put them on oxygen until, the doctor can see them. And then evaluate the 4 major organ systems. So cardiovascular, respiratory, neurologic, and then also renal. So it can be, how is their gait for neuro? Like how's their mentation even? Like, are they mentally appropriate? And then renal, do they seem like a block cat? Are they, asking the owner, have they been urinating appropriately? Anything to that nature. And then of course, cardiovascular and respiratory, like listening to them, that type of thing, feeling their pulses, that type of stuff. Looking at their gum color if possible, all of that. And then trying to get just a brief history, it doesn't have to be a huge history. Recently I was talking to someone and they said there's a way that you can politely interrupt people too. Like people, when they're in a panic, they kind of ramble and talk about whatever, like they'll talk about things from years ago with their animal rather than talking about, the actual crisis going on. So there's a way to like politely interrupt them and refocus them that you can do, without being super rude about it. So you can just politely just say, and so today they were, and get them back on track. All right. So let's get like a little survey from all of you guys on where do you guys feel confident, or where do you think you feel confident?
You want us to just
CPR,
tell you?
emergency- emergency.
Oh no, yeah,
sorry.
put it in your little Mentimeter so we can see it.
I don't, what do you mean what do you mean by
Oh,
that?
in this.
It's not allowing me to do anything. I'm on a
Oh.
tab.
Some of you got, I'm like, some of you are, okay.
I can't do anything here.
Me neither.
Really?
Mhm.
Did you guys go to the website on your computer or your phone?
I'm on a tablet.
Oh, I'm using a Mac Pro, so I don't know if it's has anything to do with that. I actually was able to.
I'm
to take
I'm
the
on a
phone.
Mac and you have to hit the little line to change numbers.
Yeah, like. Mhm.
I'm on an iPad. I can't do anything.
Are you hitting the line or anything?
It's not doing anything. I'm
Maybe-
hitting every.
Can you, okay,
Did
can you go out and come back in maybe? I don't know.
Try and log in.
It's not in the actual Zoom thing. You have to actually go to the website and click the code and it opens a separate thing. So
Oh,
like use
okay, okay,
a device or something.
got it.
then-
I'm
Then
on my iMac now, so
you have to,
Okay.
I'm using my phone separately to do it.
I'm
Yeah.
using separate too, so thank you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you have to go separately from like your actual Zoom link, sorry. I know you have to be on 2 devices. It's
No
weird.
worries. Oh. We got it. That's the important thing.
Yeah.
Perfect. And then I know that iPad now, I think they have a feature where it's like a split screen. I'm not sure how to do that, but that's
Ooh,
nice as well.
okay.
Yeah, my tablet has that, but I think that, yeah. But I'm on the iMac, so I'm confusing myself.
Technology, man.
I'm telling you.
I just like to see this because it gets interesting to see how you feel confident in, and then when we get to the questions, if you are as confident as you think. Which you might be, like totally, so.
I'm not confident in this field at all.
You're like, one, no.
But I'm good under pressure, so it's kind of interesting. You know that fight or flight thing? I fight.
Yes.
I fight.
Mm-hmm.
But don't
Or
ask me a question.
Or some people don't really know what animal nursing and emergency really contains. So they think that they're really good at it.
No.
And then they realize there's a lot more to it than they thought.
Mhm.
So, especially emergency, like, oh, emergency, super easy.
Oh my God, I would think the opposite.
Yeah, right. Totally not.
Totally not.
Like emergency has a lot in it.
Yeah.
I'm glad you
Yeah, I'm
guys
working-
feel confident in CPR though. So that's good.
Yeah, I work at a GP and lately they've been training us to do CPR stuff. Like we've been having like mock emergencies. And
Oh, good.
literally one day we had 3 crashing patients, and I work at East Bay SPCA in Oakland, and we
Oh.
are not equipped for emergencies. And so it was just weird how it happened.
Yeah, it's like they knew secretly that you guys needed that training. And nutrition, like I'm actually surprised that as high as it is. So
Really?
yeah,
I've had animals my whole life, so nutrition is super important.
good. We'll see how good you guys are with nutrition. I ask a lot of questions on nutrition.
Cool.
All right. So easy peasy stuff first. So respiratory system, this is our easy stuff, right?
Oh.
So we want to make sure our lungs sound clear. Upper airway noise, if it's stridor versus sterner, what's the difference?
Oh, I just saw that somewhere.
Isn't stridor the loud, like honking sound, and stertor is the high pitched?
Ooh, quite the opposite.
Oh, it's flipped.
Stridor is nasal,
So stridor is that wheezing.
wheezing.
Sterner is more like the snorting, snoring sound. Like I think a brachiocephalic sound.
Ah, okay.
Okay, so anything brachiocephalics do, okay, they could just be loud sounders. Stridor is wheezing. So now if they're distressed with that inspiratory with the stridor too, so you know they can have wheezing and where they're not distressed. But if they are distressed with that wheezing, obviously we need to know and bring them in back and place them in oxygen and all of that jazz, and maybe a little torb. Now, what's the amazing thing with torb, with airway, breathing, and all of that? Especially like cats. Like, why do we give cats torb? Is it this magic little juice that we give them?
Can you repeat that one more time? I'm sorry.
Why do we give cats torb when they are having like respiratory issues, and then we put them in oxygen and
What is Tor?
torb, butorphanol.
Oh, butorphanol. Sorry. Didn't understand you, sir.
Yeah. Is it like a magic? Like, what does it do?
Is it anti-inflammatory?
Not
Or
necessarily.
it relaxes them?
It's like a
Ooh. It relaxes them? Yeah. It's a good sedative, right? Like it relaxes them. It's I shouldn't say it sedates them, but it relaxes them, right? It's not necessarily, you know, this magic juice that is gonna save them from, you know, make them breathe better per se, but they're freaking out because they can't breathe, right? And we don't want them to freak out anymore. We want them to just chill so they can breathe. So we get them in oxygen. The oxygen is going to help them. And we want them to just relax, like chill out. We'll get you some help, right? So the torb is there just to relax them. Very good. And that's all I need. That's all I need for the moment. And we just give them time. So with any respiratory patient, like, don't overstress them. Don't be like, oh my gosh, I got to get a catheter in them right now. Absolutely not. We got to get x-rays right now. No, you don't. Like, they need oxygen. They need to chill. You can get x-rays later. Like, if you try to overdo it, you will kill them. So just let them relax and let them breathe some oxygen for the moment. You can get x-rays whenever. So get their respiratory rate, and you know, if they're tachypnic, meaning increased respiratory rate, apneic, which is meaning no respiratory rate, that's a problem, right? Agonal breathing means their last gasping breaths, which means, hey, we need to probably do something. Cheyenne-Stokes means that they have their tachypnic that is with apnea. So it is like they have this like just this like really fast, it's an agonal, but it's like going fast, like that. It's like last breath, but there's a lot going on. So they're obviously not alive, but you see them breathing really fast with it. Okay, so let me hide the results. Okay, mucous membranes of a dog in septic shock would look like what? Put in your answers.
Brick red.
Hey, don't say the answer.
I thought you said an answer.
On your
Um,
screen, you gotta submit it.
Yeah, you gotta submit it. She's the one on the VTNE who's just gonna blurt out all the answers.
I hope I'm
I'm
sitting next to her.
sorry.
She's like, I didn't know this wasn't a share all. I thought this was a group test. All right. Oh my gosh, you guys are so smart. Good, brick red. All right, very good. So obviously that bacteria is going to be in full force. It is going to have those toxins releasing, and those mucous membranes are going to be turning brick red. Another reason they can have brick red gums is also due to having heat stroke and stuff like that too. But they can definitely be in septic shock. Icteric, we know, can be due to them having like liver issues and stuff like that. They can also be icteric if they have like hemolysis, so breakdown of their red blood cells and stuff as well. And then pale mucous membranes can be due to anemia. It can be due to them being in just like volemic shock. And then cyanotic, meaning that they are oxygen dependent. So we need to give them some oxygen right away. Okay, so their cardiovascular system. So pink being normal, grayish is like poor perfusion, pale anemic. They're just kind of going through everything. Brown, if you guys haven't heard, is methemoglobinemia. And then also acetaminophen toxicity, if anyone has ever seen that. So essentially what happens with acetaminophen toxicity is that on the hemoglobin, it doesn't allow the oxygen to get off of the hemoglobin. And so the oxygen dies on that hemoglobin and turns it brown. And so due to that, all the mucous membranes then turn brown. And so the patient isn't able to oxygenate its tissue, and so it can't breathe appropriately. And so even if you put it in oxygen, it's not able to oxygenate its body. So it's pretty horrible because it can't breathe. So anyone know how we treat acetaminophen toxicity?
Isn't there a reversal?
Yeah, there is. What is it?
I don't know.
But
Hey,
you know there's a reversal, so that's good.
I know there is.
Anyone know? It smells really bad. But you'll never forget it once you smell it.
Acetylcysteine.
Ooh, good. Acetylcysteine. Very good. And acetylcysteine actually works a lot better too if you combine it with vitamin C. So I don't know that a lot of people do that or like know that, but like it augments itself better like if you combine it with vitamin C. So and they also say you can give it, of course, IV if you want to your patient, but it actually works better too if you actually give it orally. So a lot of people give it orally as well. So yeah, acetaminophen toxicity, it's pretty nasty. Alrighty, so CRT, so normal is like 1 to 2 seconds. Prolonged is obviously greater than 2 seconds, meaning that we have some poor perfusion. And rapid would be that we're hemoconcentrated. So it is that it's less than 1 second. Pulses can be anywhere in dogs from like 70 to 160. So it really depends on like the size of the dog or the athletic ability of the dog. So like if you maybe have like a border collie or a really active dog, you may see them have like a pulse of 60 beats a minute, and that's normal for them because they are, you know, a crazy active dog, and that's okay. I mean, even when we do surgery on some of those dogs who are like farm dogs and stuff, even, you know, no matter what type of anesthesia that we give them, like their heart rate under anesthesia might be like 40, and it's just because they're completely like, you know, in great shape and whatever. So you kind of have to take that into account too, that as long as their blood pressure is normal, like their heart rate and their blood pressure, like their blood pressure is normal, their heart rate might be a little bit lower than like, you know, other dogs that don't overly work. So you can't always go off of certain things. So it seems a little bit scary, but it's fine.
Yeah, I have a healer Australian Shepherd Border Collie, and I can tell you that is exactly how he is.
Yeah.
Even under anesthesia.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's really crazy. Like you kind of worry at first, but they're like, no, their blood pressure is okay. It's just that they are extremely fit animals. And yeah, I wish I were that fit, but I'm not. So whatever. Cats, pulse typically somewhere between 150 to 220. And that's like in hospital. So if you take your cat's like pulse and stuff at resting at your home, is 100% going to be lower than obviously at the hospital too. So take that into account. Like their pulse might be as low as 100 to 120 at home. So yeah. So just know that it might not be 220 at your home. So note their pulse quality. So are they normal, strong? Is it weak, meaning poor perfusion, snappy, is anemia, and then bounding sepsis. So I say it also like with cats and even like some dogs that are a little bit nervous to the hospital. It is a good idea, especially for us, because we worry so much about our own pets, to take their pulse and look at them at home too. Because if you do some physical exams on them at home once in a while, get their normals at home, because when you do look at them when they're sick at home, then you know like the normals that they are at home versus at the clinic versus when they're sick at home versus at the clinic, because I know you guys are going to look at them when they're sick at home. And so that way you have a good baseline, right? So if you're looking at them at home, like your cat, and their normal heart rate at home at resting is normally 120 versus at the clinic, that's 220, at least you have a baseline, right? So it's a good idea. Everyone has seen this before, or somewhat seen something like this.
Yeah.
Our recover algorithm, CPR algorithm. It's really nice because it gives you a great visual of like how our CPR should be done, from basic life support to advanced life support. It's just a little like a great easy framework of how things should be done. It obviously is not going to tell you exactly the all of our drugs that we're going to use, but there's another sheet that goes into that. But it gives you like step by step of how you should do stuff. So our basic life support is our one full cycle of 2 minutes, and then we change out people as we go. We're going to do chest compressions for any patient. We're going to do 100 to 120 beats per minute. And And then for ventilation, we do, I always say 8 to 10 breaths per minute. So it's, or you can do for chest compressions, it's 30 chest compressions to every 2 breaths. I typically do that because I like to watch the chest compress. I always watch people, so I'm a people watcher. So I watch the chest compressions and then I do 2 breaths. With our chest compressions, we do 3 different methods of chest compressions. So if we have a normal large dog, you know, like a Labrador or, you know, a Rottweiler or anything like that, we're going to do what's called thoracic pump method. So where would we place our hands for thoracic pump method? Would it go over the largest part of the chest, over the heart?
The heart.
No, not necessarily. So in thoracic pump method, it actually goes over the largest part of the chest. So that way, everything from the chest will move forward and it actually compresses on the heart itself. So we do that in our typical large dogs. Okay, so we press on the largest part of the chest, the thickest part of that chest. In our, what we call keel chested dogs, so like your greyhounds, your Dobermans, your Great Danes, and then any small dogs or cats, we do what's called cardiac pump method. And so with these, we actually are able to get as close to the heart as possible. In like our bigger dogs and stuff like that, we can't actually do cardiac pump method because our hands won't get close enough to the heart because their chest is too big. So that's why we have to do thoracic pump method. So with those guys, we actually can put our hand right above the heart. So right at that 5th intercostal space, okay? So our cheater method in that case is that we can move their elbow back, and where their elbow lands when you move their arm back is about where that 5th intercostal space is, and that's where we can put our hands to pump their chest, okay? Now, everyone loves the most, you know, popular dog right now is what, the French Bulldog, right? And then they also, people love bulldogs and brachiocephalic dogs of all kinds, right? And the unfortunate thing is that these guys are called barrel-chested dogs. And so they don't fit in the category of keel-chested dogs or really like small dogs or anything like that. And they don't fit in the category of like that kind of Labrador type of chest or anything like that. So they're barrel chest. So essentially their heart is like right in the middle of their chest. And so no matter what pump we try, we're never going to get close enough to their heart. So in that case, we actually have to turn them on their back, and we have to do cardiac like compressions on their back and pump on their sternum, just like a human, essentially. Okay. So make sure you do that, because otherwise you're not going to actually like get close enough to their chest. All right. So you're going to do chest compressions for 2 minutes. You're going to do ventilation for 2 minutes. And then you are going to switch people out. Okay. So the first thing that you're going to do are chest compressions. That's the most important thing. You're going to get an ECC tube in, and then you're going to do ventilation. You're going to then have people get vascular access so that you can actually give medications to them. And then you are gonna have someone monitoring, getting the ECG on, you're gonna have someone monitoring the ETCO2. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about medications to give and all of that as well. So when we're doing breaths, if we are doing mouth to snout, so if we put our mouth over their snout, they're actually only getting, it's about 16% of oxygen. Okay, so room air is 21%. So they're getting some oxygen, but it's not great. If we do like an ambu bag that's not hooked up to the anesthesia machine, it would just be room air. So that's 21%. If we hook it up to the anesthesia machine and have oxygen going and it's just like hooked up by their mouth, that's about 40 to 50%. So it's better. So that's why we really want to intubate and give them 100% oxygen. Okay. So also make sure the vaporizer is off. How many of you guys have actually done what's called the Gen Chung or the GV26 acupuncture point, which is right here? Or seen it?
I
I've
worked
seen
with
it.
a doctor who's done it, yeah.
Seen it.
Yeah. So you just take the smallest needle that you have. Some people actually have acupuncture needles, which is totally awesome. But you take that small needle and then you place it right in that nasal philtrum right there. And then you can just twist it a couple of times. Some people leave that needle in, some people take it out right away. I typically leave it in. And it's supposed to help with help get them to breathe. Okay. So I've seen it work several times, so it's kind of nice. As a side note, this is also a spot to help for preventing seizures as well. So I don't know that it works or whatever, but it is just one side note. So again, only give 8 to 10 breaths a minute. And then if you're ventilating them, make sure that you don't ventilate more than that 20 centimeters of water unless you're told to do more. Sometimes we can do more if like your patient has like pneumonia or whatever, we might give a little bit more, like up to 25 or something like that to really expand the alveoli, but typically we just go to the 20 centimeters of water. So if we hyperventilate the patient, the reason why we give so little is that we want to make sure that perfusion goes to the brain as much as possible. And so if we hyperventilate them, it decreases perfusion to the brain because it will constrict the cerebral blood vessels. So we don't want to constrict those blood vessels by giving them too many breaths. All right, so equipment. Pulse ox is not super reliable. It doesn't really tell us much. I typically don't even bother. It just wastes time and it doesn't tell you anything. And it's like, it's not working. Yeah, because we don't have a pulse, right? Like it's not helpful. ECG is really good because it'll tell you if we need a defibrillate or not. So definitely hook that up. ETCO2 is really good and helps you because it tells you if our patient is going to have a better prognosis or not, like are compressions going well or whatever. Typically, if we have our ETCO2 on for like surgery patients, our ETCO2 is going to be typically in between what range? Anyone anesthesia pros?
Is it 25 and 45?
Ooh, 35 to 45. So
Okay.
close. Very good. So yeah, it's going to be between 35 to 45. But in this case, our patient's not like breathing out CO2 because they're not breathing, right? So we're actually doing compression. So it's like breathing out whatever we're compressing. So we want it to be greater than at least 15 millimeters of mercury. And it's going to tell us if we're actually getting somewhere by doing our compressions and stuff like that. If we're literally getting like 0, then our prognosis is not great. So if we have like 24, then our prognosis is much better, you know, that, hey, this patient might come back, right? Our Doppler blood pressures, let's say you don't have an ETCO2 or anything like that. You could place your Doppler like on the eye to see if you're getting any type of pulse to the eye and see how your chest compressions are doing. The bad part is you have to have someone literally standing there and placing it and holding that there. So, and it's not telling you like if there's a likelihood that your patient's going to come back or anything like that. It's just only telling you if your compressions are like good.
Sorry,
So-
could you please repeat what the 35-45 was? I didn't.
Yeah. So the ETCO2, like when you're in anesthesia, you want your patient's ETCO2 to typically be in that range of 35 to 45 millimeters of mercury. That's like your ideal range.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh. Okay, so what is the recommended dosage for intratracheal drug administration during cardiac arrest? So if you did not have an IV catheter in and you had to place certain drugs down their ET tube, how much would you give? I do know we're over, so if you do have to leave, that's totally fine, but we're gonna go a little bit longer because I want to. I want to at least get through our CPR stuff. Okay. Okay, so it is double the IV dose. Very good. So awesome. So yeah, we just double that dose and we'll get down the ET tube and then we just like push it down. You can push it down with just like a breath of air or anything like that. Some people will flush it down. That makes me a little nervous because they were flushing wet saline. I don't want to put that down the lungs, but it's all up to people and how they want to do it. Just be careful if you blow into the ET tube yourself, that it can splash back at you. I had a coworker who actually blew into it and didn't like put her full mouth over it. And when she blew into it, some splashed back at her and she got atropine in her eye and it like dilated her eye for a good couple of days. So make sure you put your full mouth over it so it doesn't splash back at you, or put the ambu bag on it and blow with the ambu bag into the ET tube. So she learned from that experience. Okay, so our naval drugs. All right, so these are the drugs that you can actually put down the ET tube. So it's just a good way of remembering the drugs itself. So naloxone is our drug that we can actually reverse our opioids with. So any of your opioids like fentanyl, oh gosh, morphine, hydro, all those major ones. So naloxone is Narcan. Narcan's the brand name. Okay. So they actually just okayed that you can buy Narcan on like the shelf, which is really nice, that people will be able to carry it. Yeah. So I'm really happy about that because, you know, obviously we have a really big issue, obviously with overdoses and stuff, and it'll just be nice for people to have that available to them to hopefully save some lives. So, and then A is for atropine. So we mentioned anticholinergics earlier, right? So our anticholinergics, we have atropine. Our other anticholinergic that we do have as well is glycopyrrolate. Glycopyrrolate has the 2 R's in it, which is so weird, but whatever. But
It's a good way to remember it.
I know, it's so weird. So atropine, I always say, is like the little sister to glycopyrrolate, like in the means of that it doesn't last as long as glycopyrrolate, but it works faster than it. So so it's kind of like the sprinter, right? It starts faster but doesn't last as long, and glycopyrrolate is a long distance runner, so it like paces itself. So it increases heart rate and blood pressure. So a lot of times doctors will give atropine and epinephrine, right? Atropine won't start the heart, but it will increase the heart rate and blood pressure. So in order to start the heart, we need epinephrine, right? So epinephrine is actually called something else. Like its brand name is something else. Anyone know what it is? You guys have a natural, what I'll say is epinephrine. What is your natural, like if I were to scare you all of a sudden?
Adrenaline.
Adrenaline, good.
Mhm.
Yeah. So epinephrine, yes, the brand name is adrenaline. Okay. So essentially we're giving this patient adrenaline. So adrenaline doesn't last long, but it's gonna try to start that heart really fast. And so the goal here is to try to start that heart really fast. And then if the heart starts, it will increase the heart rate right away, the contractility of that heart, all of that. But then if it starts the heart, we have to keep it going. So that's where atropine comes in, right? So, and sometimes we get the heart started. It's like jumping a car, right? We're like, we jump the car, it starts, but then it like kind of dies down. And sometimes we got to give another dose of it even when we first start it, right? So we give the epinephrine, we give the atropine, and all of a sudden you get the dog or cat, they start decreasing their heart rate again. So you got to give more, to keep them going. So, so another drug we have is vasopressin, which we have some other drugs that we use too, like dopamine and dobutamine. But vasopressin we use for patients that have like really bad hypotension. So for hypotension, we can start with like fluid therapy, whether it's a crystalloid or colloid, but sometimes that's not enough, right? We need to fix it with medications too. So we can use a vasopressin or dobutamine or dopamine to help bring up their heart rate by helping to constrict their blood vessels, right? And bring up their heart rate. Or I'm sorry, their blood pressure. And then last we have lidocaine, right? So we all kind of know lidocaine, right? Like it's a actual like local anesthetic per se. So we use it many times to anesthetize, like, if we are doing like a laceration repair or, blocking if we're going to take a mask off or something like that. But we can also use it in the sense of, hey, this patient is throwing some VPCs and we want to see if we can, stop those VPCs, because essentially, remember, our heart is a muscle and it's really upset because we just did some pretty crazy things to it by, doing CPR on its chest, and now it's mad at us. So if we can give it some, a little bit of a local anesthetic before we get into some crazy cardiac meds, then let's do that. So we try that local anesthetic first, And if that works, then we're good. If that's not going to work, then we can kind of venture into some other meds that are going to be a little bit more hefty. All right. So normal blood pH for a dog. Now read that carefully. Ooh, come on, best answer. You guys got this. Who cares if you're wrong? Awesome. Good. So normal blood pH for a dog is 7.4. So best answer, right? So remember too, the VTNE, the answers aren't always 100% right. They have to be the best answer. So a normal blood pH for a dog is somewhere between 7.35 to 7.45. So you just have to pick the best answer that you're given. So you have to whittle down those answers, right? So when you read this, if you're reading too fast in the questions because you're starting to get stressed out by everything. Some people, when I was doing the ISBMA thing, they were reading it and they were like, normal pH of a dog. And they picked 7.0. And I was like, I knew you were thinking urine or whatever, right? Like, and so I'm like, I can just picture you, that 7th grade science kid or whatever, like neutral pH, and that's what you just picked really fast, right? But I'm like, you have to read these questions very carefully, because especially the easy ones, because those are the ones that if you get those wrong, then that's the ones that screw you, because you're looking for the hard ones that are like those long questions, and that's the ones you're paying attention to too much. And then you're looking at what you think is easy and you're going to get those wrong. Like, you have to read them very, very carefully, because you're banking on those easy ones, but then you're going to get the easy ones wrong. So just read them carefully. So, so yes, our normal pH or our normal blood pH for a dog is somewhere between 7.35 and 7.45. So how I remember that is when we talk about acid-base stuff, we have to look at 3 things in our acid base. So we're looking at our blood pH, again, 7.35, 7.45. Another thing we look at is our ETCO2, and because that is our respiratory factor, okay? And we talked about our ETCO2, which was also 35 to 45 millimeters of mercury. Remember, again, a 35 to 45 range, 7.35 and 7.45, those 2 things, so 35 to 45 at the end there. And then the ETCO2 is 35 to 45. So in my mind, I go, hey, I can remember that because they're similar, right? Now, the last part you have to kind of memorize is the bicarb. Everyone has probably heard of bicarb, right? Bicarb is the metabolic part of our acid-base stuff. So it's the HCO3, all right? So bicarb is the metabolic. It comes from the kidneys, the carbon dioxide aspects of the ETCO3, that comes from the lungs, of course, as you breathe out carbon dioxide. But the metabolic, the normal range is 22 to 26. I can't help you with that somehow, like how to memorize that, but that's the normal range for those guys. But at least you guys can know, like, okay, if you hear of, oh, this guy is metabolically acidotic, right? You can go, oh, okay, like his bicarb is off, and you know his pH is low, right? Is, you know, below 7.35, right? So you're kind of understanding what is wrong, right? Okay, so other important drugs, right? So sodium bicarb. So this is the drug that can fix that severe acidosis. So if it's less than 7.0, most of the time, if they are acidotic or something like that, or if they're alkalotic, we do fix it with fluid therapy and everything that fixes on its own. And many times too, our own bodies fix itself. So you'll see animals panting a lot if they're metabolically acidotic, and you're like, oh my gosh, they're oxygen dependent, and you're like, and then you have to realize, no, they're actually not. They're actually fixing their own issue, their own blood gas issue. So calcium gluconate, we actually treat with for hypocalcemia. So if you have like a dog who's just had puppies or a cat that's just had kittens, those kittens like suck them dry from their calcium. Maybe if they haven't eaten appropriate diet, like a kitten or a puppy food while they have been pregnant and they haven't eaten the appropriate amount, then they won't have enough calcium to feed their puppies or the kittens. So now they're low on their own calcium. So we actually have to give them calcium. And then we send them home with a calcium supplement. What's the calcium supplement we typically give them that's over the counter? You guys take it sometimes too.
Vitamin C.
Yeah. No.
Tums.
Yeah. So calcium, which is made out of calcium carbonate. Very good.
Okay.
Yeah, Tums. So, and we obviously we don't take it as a supplement per se, but we take it obviously if we have some acid reflux or something. So, but if we are giving calcium gluconate, we actually will put them on an ECG when we're giving it, and give it slowly because it can actually cause some bradycardia. So anyone hear of flumazenol before?
Yes.
Yes. So this is the reversal for any of our benzodiazepines. So like diazepam and midazolam. So many times we don't use flumazenol that as much because diazepam and midazolam don't last in the system as long, but we may need to reverse it. So it is nice to have on hand, or I mean, our animals eat anything. So maybe an owner has a prescription of diazepam at home and the animal eats, you know, a ton of the diazepam and may need it reversed or whatever. You never know. How about atipamezole? I always love this because a lot of people don't actually know the generic name of this, but they know the brand name. So it's the alpha-2 agonist antagonist. Where's my pharmacology people?
Antecedent.
Antecedent, very good. So antecedent is the agonist, or I'm sorry, it's the antagonist to what drug?
Dextromethorphan.
Good, dextromethorphan or dexmedetomidine, right? So dexmedetomidine is the agonist, the alpha-2 agonist. Okay, so how I think of it is dexmedetomidine is the 15, 16-year-old kid who just wants to sleep in on Saturday morning, right? Agonist. And edipamazole is the antagonist, the little kid, little sister, little brother who wants to antagonize and wake up the agonist, right? Which is exactly what edipamazole does. It wakes them up, right? So that's how you can remember it. They're antagonizing them. They're waking them up. So there's the other type of alpha 2s as well, right? Anyone use them? So dexmedetomidine and edipamazole are at the beginning of the alphabet. Then there's 2 of them there at the end of the alphabet. So who's the agonist, alpha 2 agonist in that one?
Yobine or something with a Y.
That one's the antagonist.
Okay.
Yohimbine.
Yohimbine.
Yeah, Yohimbine.
Okay.
I love that drug name.
So the
Love it.
agonist is xylazine.
Good. Xylazine is the agonist, right? So the agonist, xylazine is the one who makes you fall asleep, right? And then yohimbine is the antagonist who wakes xylazine up, okay? So just kind of try to remember it in that fashion. Like I think of things as like a 4th grader that I have to picture it that way.
I think of those as XY.
Yep. Yeah. I put them at the end of the alphabet, right? So like, yeah, dexmedetomidine and anisetin, they're at the beginning of the alphabet. The end of the alphabet is xylazine and yohimbine.
Yep.
So, and then I make a little story about them. Yeah. Okay, so routes of administration on these, you can give it in a jugular catheter if you have to, right? So even if you have a big pit bull and you are like, oh, should have great peripheral veins if they were alive, right? 100% would have great peripheral veins. Well, guess what? If you're doing CPR, sometimes they don't. It's okay to place a jugular catheter in them in that moment. Totally. You just need some venous access. So go ahead and place it in a jugular vein if you can't get it in a peripheral. Don't waste a ton of time. You can do a peripheral IV catheter is fine. Follow that though with a good amount of flush. So we'll talk about that. You could do an IO catheter if you absolutely have to. That's fine. It just, unfortunately, it takes a lot of time. And then if you get them back, it's really painful. So like you'll have to eventually put an IV catheter in. ET2, you just have to double the dose. If you're doing intracardiac, you technically do a 10th of the dose. It's just interesting because by the time you're like trying to place the IV and everything and doing that, you've already drawn up the dose. Usually your doctor just like, give me it. I'm just doing IC. And then they just take the whole thing and you're like, but that's a full dose and they just do it. So it's interesting. So for fluid amount, a lot of people will just do like 3 ml flushes and put that into their crash cart, except for when you only do 3 ml flushes and you don't have fluids going for your CPR patient. If you only do a 3 ml flush for a really big dog, that drug is not getting to the heart because there is no circulation going in that patient. So you have to make sure that you are actually flushing with an appropriate amount for that patient. So for cats, we really need to flush with at least 3 to 5 mils for that cat each time. And for small dogs, at least 5 to 10 mils. And for a large dog, like 10 to 15 mils. And then of course, no heparin. We don't need to do heparin in these guys. Honestly, and none of the patients really need to do any type of heparin. But make sure you're doing an appropriate amount of flush because they don't have any circulation going on at this moment. All right. We'll just finish up. I think we just have a couple more slides and we'll close it out. So the P wave component of the QRS complex usually corresponds to what? Ooh, good. Okay, so it is actually atrial contraction. So we'll talk about that. So with the P wave, we have our atrium that is working and contracting. Okay. And so that means that it's depolarizing at that point. So it's contracting. Our QRS complex is the ventricular contraction, right? Or depolarizing. In the QRS complex is where the atrium also repolarizes at that point. You're of course not going to see it where it's repolarizing, but this is where the ventricle is also depolarizing. So when I tell people, if you see an issue in the P wave, that's an atrial issue. If you see an issue in the QRS, that's a ventricular issue. Okay, so when we're looking at rhythms and stuff like that, like always remember a P wave, if that looks like a mess, that's an atrial issue. A QRS, if there's an issue with the QRS, that's a ventricle issue. The T wave, that is where the ventricle is actually repolarizing as well. All right. Basic stuff too. So you guys will remember like how to place your ECG leads and stuff like that. I'm sure you have learned different ways of how to remember to place your ECG leads and stuff. They had the 4 basic leads, but there are even more leads that you can also place, especially if you go into cardiology, there are more leads to place. Okay, so we'll just finish this one and then we'll call it a day. So what structure is the pacemaker of the heart? Ooh, we're mixed. Okay, so it is actually the SA node is the pacemaker of the heart. So essentially, so the SA node is actually up in this area here. So this is where our heartbeat starts. And that is where it's going to set that pace of the heart. Okay. Our AV node is actually going to be over here. All right. And so, yes, our pacemaker of the heart is that SA node. All right. So very good. All right. Ooh, this is a great place to stop because then we can actually talk about this. How many of you actually remember how to count a heart rate? Or know how to count a heart rate? Does this look familiar?
Never saw that before.
Okay, well then this is a great place to stop so we can talk about this next time. Perfect. Any questions?
So Beth, this week we should be looking at, you said patient care. What is it?
So I have everyone on emergency care, but if you guys are
emergency.
on animal nursing, that's okay as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So if some of you guys are on animal nursing and everything, that's fine because I know the next group is working on, I have them starting for some reason on emergency. So, but I'm doing both of them together for the next couple of weeks just to get them through everything. So, Oops.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
I just have a quick question. Could you tell me what the next, so I'm going to be away.
Yeah,
And I don't know what kind of access I'll have.
okay.
I mean, I'm gonna try and attend, if at all possible, but if you could tell me what the next one is going to be, just so that I can take a look at least take a look at it. when I do
Yeah,
it.
so next week, we're gonna finish up all of this
This?
stuff. So it'll be like animal nursing and emergency stuff. So we'll finish
That's
that
fine,
for
yeah.
next week. And then after that, we are going to be working on let me just make sure, diagnostic imaging and dentistry.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yes, I was like, let me make sure that's what it was. Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, so that's like the next 2 weeks. I was like, I want to be away.
I'll be on a cruise. My parents
Oh.
are we're taking my parents on a cruise for their 6th wedding anniversary.
Oh, wow,
Where-
that's
where are you going?
awesome.
The Bahamas.
Oh, I'm
That's
going on an
great.
Alaskan cruise. I was thinking if we were together.
Oh, that's funny.
That would be funny. I want to go on
You guys
Alaska.
suitcase you can pack me in?
Yeah, I want to go on an Alaskan cruise. That'd be great.
That's, I've done that. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Just make sure you have a balcony.
We do. Yes, we do.
Ah, that's
Is
awesome.
it Royal Caribbean?
Yeah. No,
Oh.
it's through Carnival.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I did that years ago. It was amazing.
Yeah, we're excited.
Yeah.
Wow, awesome. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much. I'll see you all next week. And
Thank
then make sure if you have any questions, reach out for sure. You can reach out on Facebook, on our Facebook group. You can reach out to me if you have any
Thank you.
questions. I don't mind. So I'll see you all next week.
Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
so much.
Yeah, you too.
Have
Bye-bye.
a great day, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, you too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.